Hello everyone and welcome to the Process Podcast. Liam Carmichael.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. How's your day been?
My day, well, every time we do this podcast, it's a Wednesday. So my day's typically the same every time you ask me about my day, but I'll go for it nonetheless. So it started off with some programming in the morning. So I've got no in-person clients on a Wednesday. So that's normally a big admin day.
Can I just ask, is that something you deliberately change in your schedule to allow you to have that day to work?
Yeah, so Monday morning I'll schedule off, and Wednesday full day just allows me to gives me space to do all my admin, programming, etc., content creation. So Wednesday morning is programming. I then came to the gym. I grabbed a coffee outside. The weather's been absolutely beautiful in Hong Kong.
Iced coffee?
Iced black. So good. Prisma do actually a pretty good job. Not as good as, I was going to say Fat West, but yeah, we'll get the joke.
I love that sticking now.
Sticking. It definitely is. It's even in my head. Then what did we do? We came in and we trained. We had an unbelievable session.
It's a good session.
It was a good session. Power cleans were feeling good. We then done, what did we do after power cleans? Oh, we done some hip thrust and, well, I done strict handstand push-ups. And you done incline bench press.
We did some like aerobic intervals and then a bit of bodybuilding to finish. Let me ask you, because obviously we train as a team every single day. What in your eyes constitutes to what makes a great sesh and what makes just
an average
an okay sesh?
Well, I think it always depends on how basically I'm feeling. So we talked about it last time in our podcast, but we've introduced our daily check-ins. So 9 times out of 10, if I'm feeling really fucking good, it basically means everybody else is feeling really good.
Well, what constitutes? Because we give a score out of 20 basically. So what in your eyes is really fucking good?
What if I'm?
What threshold do you have to cross?
If I'm over if I'm like a 15 plus, it's like a
15.
Yeah,
I feel that's low for a fucking good. What comes above fucking good?
Unbelievably fucking good.
Okay, cool. What's that? 18s, 19s.
That would be like a 20.
Okay.
Today was like a 16. Okay. So it was a pretty good session. Just the vibe in the gym recently has been pretty good. There's a lot of change going on, but it's exciting times. And I think that we are all a bit nervous and anxious, but we're all fucking really excited deep down. So good session in power cleans, some bodybuilding, some aerobic work. For me, that constitutes as a really good session.
Yeah, whenever there's no squatting for me, it's a great session. I agree. I think, but the thing is, like today, my scores weren't that high. Like,
well, when you done your physical check-in, you were like a 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's probably the lowest I've been in a really long time, and that's just I know why. That's a culmination of a few really challenging weeks, like emotionally, cognitive wise, lots of thinking, lots of decision making, lots of grinding out long hours of work. But I had a great session today as well. And I do think like the vibes in the gym and around the team, it's like all it takes is one person to pull away that energy. Yeah. And when everyone's just vibing and everyone is just, like having a laugh, jamming to music, pushing each other, cheering each other on. And then I think sessions like today where like you finish in unison, when there's aerobic work and
we're all on the bike.
Yeah, we're basically in every 75 seconds, 75 seconds off, and we're moving together kind of like a team through the pieces and resting together. I feel like those type of sessions always bring people together.
So that camaraderie almost where people are like working out at the same time and cheering people on. I think that's really powerful. Yeah,
you're kind of actually almost doing a team workout, but you're individual. And I feel like that is just, and when you finish with bodybuilding, it's always
a good day.
It's always a good time. Yes. Let's talk about some of the challenging things that are happening at the moment. What are some of the challenging things happening at the moment?
So as a company, we are obviously making big moves. We are moving the way that we pay coaches, essentially. We're moving away from commission-based salaries, and we're moving all our coaches to fixed salaries. Reason being, well, we know that coaching is a really, really good career, but it can also be quite a short career if you don't manage your time and your effort and your rest appropriately. And obviously, if you're on a commission-based salary, well, it's really good to work hard, but the next month you can't really have that. You can maybe do 2, 3 months, 4 months at a really good push, but after that, you're going to be really tired because you've given everything. And like coaching, you're constantly giving to that other person. You're not really getting much back. So we decided that that's no longer who we want to be, and that's no longer what we want to be as a company going forward.
Yeah, I think that's one really important part of it. Is like, how can we make the coaching career sustainable for people? I think another thing for us was that the current model in which we operate, which is essentially coaches exchanging time for money, and the way that we earn the money is the time we put into our clients. That's great at serving the people in front of you, but what we miss out on is the people that we're not serving, the potential of like the rest of the world out there. And when I go back to our mission that we've just revamped, which is, you know, to positively impact athletes, coaches and affiliates' ability to sustainably grow. When I think about that, I'm just like, we can make such an impact on the world. And it's something I've always felt. It's like I feel like I have so much to give, and this team has so much to give, and it's frustrating when you can't give it. And a big part of why we haven't been able to impact the world is the way that we paid our coaches. It's like we've rewarded people for just coaching that hour, then going home and doing nothing. And because of that, like, we're never grown beyond these four walls. And what we have is something beautiful and amazing in the process programming, where we have, you know, an affiliate program, we have an individual subscription model, and we're about to launch coaching education. And it's like, those are three infinitely scalable avenues that we can impact people and change lives. And I want to now have, and I know within this team we've got amazing people that can do that, and I want to empower those people to be able to start doing that, as well as still coaching their hours.
Oh yeah, for sure. We still have to get your experience coaching, right?
Yeah, and whilst having the security and the stability of a salary, not worrying about whether your client shows up or whether you go on holiday and you lose your income. I want to create that stability, but more than anything, I want to create growth for individuals, you know, to be able to learn and acquire skills, match talents to job responsibilities beyond just coaching your hour. And I know that, you know, because I've been on about a fixed salary for about a year now. It's like the impact that I've been able to have on this company and my purpose has been amazing. And I'm like, what if we can have 15 people doing that? That's super exciting. And so we're making that transition now. So yesterday I presented to the team the 1, 3 and 5 year vision. I painted a really clear picture of the struggles of what we're currently dealing with as a company, and why what we're currently doing is not sustainable and is not really building a future for any of us, like the business and the individuals, and why something has to change, and essentially creating that roadmap to be like, okay, this is where we're currently at. What do we need to do in order to achieve that 1, 3, 5 year vision? And, you know, one of the biggest things that's a part of that is this changing of the way that we pay coaches. And it is really scary. And, you know, this week is full of hard conversations, sitting down with individuals and presenting the changes. And I don't know, but I think we may lose people. There's going to be some big changes within the organization. It's really now about finding out, you know, who is really on board with the overall mission and who wants to contribute to this bigger purpose. And, you know, we're going to have some people who were perfect for the business and what we were doing a month ago, but are now no longer perfect for the business or what we're trying to achieve. And that's hard. That's very hard. Yeah. And I think what I'm definitely feeling is like, you can kind of feel the divide in the team, right? You've got the people who are just like beating their chest, being like, let's just go now. Like, I'm so fired up for this. And the people who are questioning, maybe like, I don't know if I'm in this for that reason. Maybe actually the commission-based model and just looking after myself and earning good money.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
And I mean, like, I'm the first person to say there's nothing wrong with that, because that's what the business has been for 13 and a half years. That's how I've paid myself for 12 and a half years. So, but you know, with change comes true colors. With change comes amazing opportunities. But
with change comes growth.
With change comes growth, and that doesn't mean it's not hard. But so lots of changes here, and I want to keep. The reason I'm having these conversations at the start of the podcast is I know there's a lot of people out there, gym owners or coaches or people in other industries that are commission based, who are or have struggled with this whole way to sustainably grow and to, you know, impact more than just the people they serve. And so I want to keep people updated on the story and tell you guys how it's going to unfold, because I'm not sure how it's going to unfold. You know, when I look at it on paper, I think it's pretty magical and we're going to achieve some amazing things, but it may go tits up. I may well.
3 months down the line, we'll be back on the podcast. Yeah. Actually, guys.
Actually, we're back to commission-based salaries. Actually, there is no more podcast because we can't afford it. You know, there's a lot of trust that's going to go into people. Like, people may not actually be able to do the jobs we set them to do. So, anyway, listeners, just watch the space. I'm going to keep you guys up to date on how this whole thing goes, the good, the bad, the ugly. But I do know that this is 100% the right step for a really, really positive future. And, you know, we have full intention to roll this out to all of our affiliates. You know, I want all of our affiliates within our network to also be able to find a way to sustainably grow, to sustainably look after their coaches and achieve the amazing things that I know we can do together. So watch this space.
Let's go.
So Liam, the real reason we're here is to talk about you.
Okay.
I realize I've had you on this podcast many times.
Many times.
The listeners love hearing you. You're a presence on social media. But what I did with a lot of the other coaches as part of this team is we started by telling their story. And I think the storytelling is really, really powerful. I love storytelling. I love listening to stories. And I love just being a listener and connecting the dots behind someone's history and who they are today. I think that's like one of the most fascinating things about conversations and doing this podcast. And I realized we haven't talked about your story. I know your story. I feel quite well because we've talked about it a lot. But I'm sure there's parts of your story that I don't know. And so I'm going to pretend that I know nothing about you.
Nice.
And we're going to go way back to the beginnings. But before we get there,
I'm pretty nervous just putting it out there.
The good thing is you just got to just use your memory and just relay what actually happened. Let the audience judge. There'll be no judgment. But I think we should start with what you do now. You know, you've been in Hong Kong now for just over a year.
It's been a year and a half that I've been in Hong Kong.
Year and a half. You moved here with your wife, Petra.
I did move here. We moved from Dubai.
From Dubai, where you were coaching. You are now regarded very much as a senior coach within this organization. Your responsibilities outside of just individual coaching. You are Mr. Build, as John the cameraman has coined you, the man who's behind all the Build program and helping that program grow. You are a part of the individual coaching education team here. You're working with me on building the individual coaching course. So I feel like you actually do a lot of things for someone who's not been here for very long.
It's pretty good. I'm actually pretty happy, yeah.
You've taken on so much responsibility and did an amazing job with it. So I want to hand the mic over to you now. I'd love you to take us back to like where it all began. Chronologically, I want to work through Liam Carmichael's life. So maybe it starts with like, where were you born and what did that look like? You don't have to be too descriptive in terms of what it looked like when you
come out the womb. I won't go into that. I won't go into that much detail.
You can remember that though.
That'd be fucking pretty. That'd be a great story. So originally from Glasgow, born and raised in Glasgow.
That's Scotland, by the way.
That is Scotland.
You don't know where that is.
They should know where Glasgow is. It's a great city. It's probably one of the best cities in the world. Just putting it out there.
You genuinely believe that?
Yeah, 100%.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I've never been to Glasgow.
Yeah, you're missing out.
Been to Edinburgh.
I'll take you on day to Glasgow.
In my head, I picture Glasgow as like really grey, really cold, really wet. But I've heard Scotland has some beautiful scenery that I actually haven't seen.
I'd say Glasgow is a post-industrial city, so it is quite grey, it is quite dark, but when the sun shines, I'll tell you,
for those 2 days
beautiful.
It's bloody good.
Yeah. So yeah, born in Glasgow. Obviously went to school there till I was about 15, and then I had a massive change in my life. That massive change was, well, we upped sticks and we moved to France.
Why did you move?
So basically where I'm from in Glasgow is maybe not the best place in the world to grow up in terms of, there's a lot of fighting, a lot of drugs, a lot of, me personally, I wasn't going to school, I was always getting into trouble, police were involved, and my parents were just like, actually, do you know what, we can do way better than this, and I've got a younger sister, so they didn't want the same things that happened to me, happen to my sister. So like, actually, we're just going to up sticks and we're moving to France. And when they told me we're moving to France, I was like, no way are we actually going to move to France. They're just telling me this to scare me. So I start behaving. Literally about 3 weeks later, we were packing boxes and we were moving to France.
Oh, there's two things I want to ask. Number one, like knowing how much of a calm character you are now, I find it really hard to picture you being like an aggressive, violent, naughty child. Like, tell me about that.
And I think it was just the circle that I was in. It wasn't me personally being aggressive. That was just like, that was the norm. Like, it was the norm that you didn't go to school. Like, there was a point where it was like 3 weeks where I'd only turned up to school for like 4 days. That's when the police got involved. And Mum was like, what are you doing? And we were just going round and just causing trouble. Like, very stupid. But at that point, I thought I knew everything in the world. I was like, I'm good to go. Like, this is what I'm doing is good, I'm cool, like, I've got all these friends. But actually, like, when I look back at it now, it was pretty stupid what I was doing. Like, we were running around, like, throwing stuff at windows, like, just being really naughty and just really stupid, essentially, as a teenager. So my parents were like, no, we can do better than this. And we moved to France, and when they said they were moving to France, they didn't know we were actually going to go, like, which part of France.
But why France? Why did they choose France?
I think that they had travelled to, my dad had travelled to France when he was younger and really enjoyed it. So he was like, it's kind of close to the UK. But bearing in mind, like, no one spoke French. Like, we didn't know exactly which part of France. They just knew that they wanted to go to Brittany. Now, Brittany is the west coast of France, northwest coast. It's a pretty big place. France is a pretty big place. So they literally packed their boxes, done a bit of research online, saying we're going to go to Brittany. We drove, so it was a car. It was me, my sister, my mum, dad, and my uncle, my auntie had hired this massive van, and all the boxes, and the dog. The dog was with us in the car, and all the boxes were in the van. And we were driving to this place, Brittany in France.
And you'd never been?
Never been to France. No one spoke French. And
when you say no one in your family spoke French?
No one in our family spoke French. So we rocked up to this small village of 700 people called Plougonvert. If anyone knows where Plougonvert is in this podcast, I'll be very impressed.
Yeah, give us a shout out if you do.
Yeah, shout out to Plougonvert. 700 people, and they decided to stop. Now, it's a very typical town in France where you got like your church, you got a bar tobacco cafe type place, and you got a bakery, and you got a few houses, 700 people, and you got like always got a football field because they've always got like small football teams, and we decided to stop there.
So genuinely, you packed up and drove without any destination other than France, and you just got to Brittany and you just stopped in this town and said, this is where we're going to live.
This is where we stopped.
That's mental.
Literally, like, I've always questioned that, and my parents was like, why? Like, what was going through your head? And they've obviously got a kind of like an adventurous streak in them. Like, doing that's pretty ballsy when you've got a family. Like, they had full-time jobs, we were in school, we had a whole life, we had a house, everything. And they were like, no, we can do better than this. And they just started, they were like, we'll go to France, let's do it.
So cool. So did they have jobs at this time? They quit their jobs, they sell the house. How are you funding this as a family?
So we lived in it was like a flat. It was like a 2-bedroom flat, but we converted the loft into a bedroom. So that was my bedroom. My dad was a joiner, so like a carpenter. He fits windows, fits doors, builds conservatories. And my mum was working in a nursery. So they decided to quit those jobs, take us out of school, and go to France.
Did they find jobs fast? Like how were you paying for all this?
Well, we sold the house that we had, or the flat that we had, we sold.
Gotcha.
So with that money, they had a bit of a buffer. And obviously, in Glasgow, it's a bit more expensive in terms of property. So they had a bit of buffer in terms of, they were now going to rural France where property's not that expensive compared to Glasgow. So they had a bit of a buffer, but we stayed in like an Airbnb for like 4 months until they found a place that they could rent. We rented this place, stayed there for a couple of months, and then they eventually bought a house in that same village, Plougonvert.
So you were 15 at the time?
I was 15, yeah.
So do you remember like stopping in that little town and getting out and being like, what was that like?
I hated it. Like, I literally, I didn't enjoy it at all. So like, I had my friendship circle, like I had all my friends, I had my family, everything, and that was all taken away from me. Like, I wanted to go back to Glasgow first thing. That's all I used to say to my mum and dad. Mum, just let me go back. I'll stay with my nana. I'll stay with my grandparents. I'll figure it out. Just let me go back. And they were like, no, you're not going back. So I stayed. Had to go to school in France, which was, when I reflect back on it now, was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I remember the day, like, they dropped me off to the school gate. And in France, bear in mind, we're talking rural France. So we stayed in this village, 700 people. There's another village, maybe like 15 minutes, which is a bit bigger. It's got the college and stuff, the school. I turned up there and like, they don't give you helpers or anything. Like, you know how sometimes you would go to like a foreign school and you would get like a helper that would like help you when you're in like class? I had none of that. So I just rocked up to this gate. And now that I've talked to my mum said that was also the hardest day of her life, was leaving me at that school gate, knowing that I didn't really have anyone in that school to really help me. So yeah, turned up to school, absolutely hated it. They put me in a year, so I was 15, but because I didn't speak French, the year that I was going into would have been the year that was going to sit like the standard grades. So they put me in a year below. So not only could I not speak French, I was also like the older kid in the class. Everybody thought I was fucking stupid, right? I couldn't speak French. The only thing that I was actually really good at was obviously English and sports. That was the only thing I was good at. It was very, very hard.
But how, I mean, I found school pretty hard and I spoke the language. Like, how do you even navigate? You know, surely you sat down in the classroom, the teacher starts speaking to you in French, and what do you do?
Well,
like, surely it's just
like,
there's nothing you can
there's
do.
nothing really I can do, and it was like they used to think that I was a wee bit like stupid, and I was like, guys, I don't understand. Like they were trying to, like, for example, I was doing the curriculum just like everyone else, so we were going into like Spanish classes. So picture this: they're trying to like teach me Spanish in French when I don't even speak French, and they're wondering why my scores are not that good. I was like, guys, like this, I don't speak French. Where we stayed, there was actually quite a lot of like expats that lived there, so there was a few British people. So they hooked me up with like this kid. I remember his name was James. He fucking hated me. He was like one of the only English kids, or the English speaking kids in that school. But he had lived in France for a long time, so he kind of let go of him being an English kid, and he had became more French. Then obviously I had to sit next to him all the classes. They put me like buddied me up with this dude, and he was kind of like geeky. He was like super into computers, and that was not my thing at all. And we just couldn't connect, and he fucking hated me because now he was known as the kid that has to hang around with the older kid that's a bit stupid and doesn't speak French. So it was pretty fucking hard, to be honest.
And like, how long before you actually started picking up the language and actually started learning something?
It took me like I'd say like to properly start learning this stuff, like a good like year and 2-3 months.
Still feel like that's nothing.
There's nothing, no, yeah,
like,
for sure.
You going from not speaking
from
a lick
zero,
of French.
Yeah, from 0 to 100. I mean, I went to like French in their high school in Scotland, but it was literally like bonjour, ça va.
Yeah,
I could ask for a piece. I knew what a piece of bread was. I knew what like random stuff was, but I couldn't formulate a sentence, let alone learn Spanish and French. Right?
Well, I think the context of why I'm saying that's still really impressive is I learned French for probably 6 years at school, and I probably learned, other than 1 to 10, about 20 more words, and that's over a span of like many years. And to think that because didn't only just learn French, you learned how to learn a curriculum. And I would imagine, curriculum in school, there's like nuances and words that you wouldn't typically have to know to have a conversation with someone. So it's kind of, I guess, the level of French that you had to learn was just beyond just hello, how are you doing, and getting around town.
But like on the flip side of that, that's why I learned French so well. Even now I speak French and Italian. I'm sure we'll get into the Italian story after, but like my French compared to my Italian, my French is way better because it's really ingrained in me, and I learned it at that 15 where I was just like a sponge. My brain's just absorbing. Whilst Italian I learned when I was a bit older, and I don't speak it as well as I do French.
Talk me through some of the struggles in that first year, like being labelled as like the older dumb English kid, I guess. Like, did that have an effect on you in any way? Did that change? Did that evolve you?
I think it made me very comfortable with being alone. I think, like, when you told me we were going to do this podcast, I actually sat down and reflected quite hard on just my upbringing and stuff. And I've always noticed that I've been quite good at being alone, and I'm okay with like sitting with my thoughts, doing things on my own, and that's actually like progressed through my life. Like then I was long, so I was flight attendant and stuff, and that's quite a lonely career as well. You're constantly traveling, you're on your own, etc. But I've always been okay with sitting with my own thoughts and doing things on my own, getting comfortable in my own skin, essentially.
And I'm guessing before that, when you were in Scotland, that wasn't something that you were that comfortable with.
Well, I was trying to be someone that actually didn't want to be. I was in a circle of friends and in a bubble, and it had this lens where I had to be the naughty kid.
Fit in, yeah.
I had to fit in. I had to go and fucking throw stuff at windows to be cool. That was the validation, right?
I remember those days.
It wasn't like, oh, he's not going to school. Oh, he's a cool kid. That was just the circle that I was in. But actually, deep down, I probably shouldn't have been in that circle. But that was just the culture and the majority of people that I was surrounded with, right?
How long did it take you to have that realization?
That I wasn't that person?
The realization that as a kid in Scotland, you weren't being your authentic self. And, when you actually moved to France and you had time alone, that you maybe started to evolve into something that you could be more proud of and say that this is more of an authentic version of me. Is that something you were realizing at the time, or is that something that you've reflected on in like your adult years?
I think more in my adult years, but naturally that happened because the circle of friends that I was like encircled by wasn't the people that I used to hang around with. So my behaviors, my thought process, like I was going to school. Like I was learning, I was doing all these things, which was completely different to who the person I was before. So it was like it was almost a natural evolution to who I am now, to get pulled out that circle, to go into that circle.
So who did you evolve from the naughty kid in Scotland into this kid in France? Like, if you were to try to explain what that new Liam Carmichael was as like a 15, 16, 17-year-old, how would you describe him?
I think very, very humble, very patient. I could communicate a lot better, not in terms of language, but I really had to learn how to communicate via body language, for example. Learn how to try and figure out from the other person what they're trying to say, because I didn't understand the words. So that was a massive learning curve in terms of who I am today. I do think that I'm quite patient. I am quite calm, and that's obviously stemmed from I was forced to be calm and forced to be patient because I didn't know what other people were saying. So it forced me to become this person where I essentially I was very humble, very polite. Right.
This is the connecting the dots that I talked about at the start of this podcast, and it's like, it's so cool hearing that, because you didn't need to tell me that I think I'm a good listener, I'm very patient and very humble, because I know those are some of your greatest qualities. And to now see that, you know, as a 15, 16-year-old and how you acquired these traits of yours, I guess, these behaviors of yours now is really, really cool. At what point did you turn from telling your parents that you hated being here to now like accepting, and maybe even was there a point where like you were happy in France?
I was very happy at one point. It was, well, first of all, when I started to create good connections, because I could actually speak the language. So I became friends with, even I've still got these friendships today. So it was like it was a pivotal point when I actually enjoyed going to school. I enjoyed learning. Why? Because I now understood what I was learning, and I created like bondships with people and relationships, and I could communicate essentially, right? So it was now allowing me to be happy, and now realize what I was doing in Scotland was terrible. Like, it's not what you're supposed to be doing at 15. You're not supposed to be smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol. Like, you're supposed to be going out, like, and in France there's obviously a culture where you're going out and playing sports. You're spending time with your family on a Sunday. So these were things that I was starting to learn there. And I was actually turning around and I was having this realization, actually, this is actually pretty cool where I am. And when I left France, I sat my mum and dad down and I thanked them. I was like, thank you for taking me out of Scotland and Glasgow, even though I hated it in the beginning. Like, I wouldn't be having this conversation at this table right now if it wasn't for their decision. And when they made that decision, I fucking hated them. Like, there was a lot of resentment towards my parents at that time, because they took me out my comfort zone essentially. But now when I look at it and I reflect back, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
My next question was going to be like, have you ever thanked your parents for that decision? Like, how did they receive that conversation, that compliment, I guess, you paid them to say thank you?
My mum started crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, she started crying as soon as I said, it was just before I was leaving to go on to my next adventure. We sat down at a table and I said thank you to my mum and dad, like, for doing all these things for me, and it was quite emotional. And
yeah. I'm getting quite emotional thinking about it.
It was good. It was good.
So talk me through this leaving. Where were you leaving? Why were you leaving? Where were you going?
So when I've obviously finished my curriculum in college or high school, whatever you want to call it, finished that. And in France, in rural France, it's a culture where it's quite industrial. People have got like trades and stuff. It's like you leave school, you either go to university or you pick up a trade. You become a mechanic, become a plumber, electrician, whatever that may be.
Make shoehorns,
whatever that's going to be. So I chose to take the route of becoming a mechanic. No idea why I chose that. It was probably pretty random. I can't really remember why I chose it, but it seemed pretty cool at the moment. Like, become a car mechanic. Yeah, sweet. My mum was like, oh yeah, get a trade. That'll be cool. So it was an apprenticeship. So it was 2 weeks working at the garage and then 1 week at school where you were learning. So that was 2 years of becoming like a pure mechanic. And on the third year, you could decide if you wanted to specialize a bit more in like within the mechanic industry. So I chose to become an auto electrician.
What's an auto electrician do?
So basically, we just anything. Well, you got to think at the time it was 2007, right? So cars are not like they are today. You don't really have Teslas and like a lot of electronics, but that's the way the car industry was moving. It was moving away from mechanical to more electric. So it was like all the circuits and stuff within cars. So that's what you were learning about. And at the school that I went to, it was obviously it was a French school. So you either chose between Renault, you could work in Renault cars, or you could work on, so the same group of like a Citroen and Peugeot is called
Peugeot,
yeah, they're called PSA. They're actually the same group. So the engines that you find in a Citroen and the engines that you find in a Peugeot is exactly the same. So they're within the same group. So I chose that route, Peugeot and Citroen. So I specialised for 1 year to become an auto electrician. Random.
So this is basically like when kids make the choice to go to university, you made the choice to go down this apprenticeship route in a specialised school, essentially, to become, and that was 3 years.
That was 3 years, yeah.
And then what happened?
At that time, well, my mum had obviously picked up, and I had picked up how well that I actually had learned French. Like, I was like dreaming in French. I was thinking in French.
Did your parents learn French as well during this time?
They learned, but I was like, out of my family, I was the one that fucking nailed it. Just because I think it was just at that specific age that my sister was a bit younger, but she didn't learn it as much as I learned it.
I think you remember saying, you said that she kind of fell into the English group of friends. Is that right?
At her primary school, there happened to be like 2-3 English families or expats who spoke English, so she fell into that group. So I'd really picked up French, and I actually fucking really enjoyed it. Then I started to become very interested in languages. So my mum was like, well, why don't you stop being a mechanic and go and try and travel and pick up another language or something, go out there and do an adventure. So we started looking online. At this point, I'm 18 years old. So we found a flight attendant job. So that was working for Ryanair.
Yes.
So I applied for Ryanair, got the job, and the training was in Madrid, Spain. So I was like, great, I'm going to go to Spain. I'm 18, this is going to be fucking sick. So went to Madrid, done the training there for 3 months. And within your training, you get to have a choice. You put 3 cities or 3 bases into a hat. And whatever you get, that's where you're going to be based. So I remember choosing, I was like, Barcelona, Rome.
Ibiza.
They had no Ibiza, but they had one in Mallorca.
Nice.
So I chose those 3. And I ended up getting Rome.
Nice.
So they based me in Rome. So I went from Madrid to then Rome.
So you went through Ryanair training school.
So it was a training school.
How long was that?
So that was 3 months in
3
Madrid.
months, yeah. And then they located you to Rome.
They based me in Rome, Italy, and I was obviously being a flight attendant there in Rome.
So when you say a flight attendant in Rome, basically your home base was in Rome. You were flying in and out of Rome, but always coming back to Rome.
Correct.
Tell me about that experience.
That was an unbelievable experience. Obviously, the goal was for me to go out and learn different languages. So I was now found myself in Rome, Italy. I'd never been, and I'm now working for Ryanair, which was a great job. It was well paid. They helped you find accommodation and stuff. So I'd done that for about a year. Then I actually got fired from that job.
Oh,
yeah. So
you left this off your CV.
Yeah, I left that off my CV. So I was 19 at the time. And long story short, I was out like partying and stuff, and they put you on like this thing. It's called like reserve. So reserve, you can get a phone call and you have to
standby
be like standby. That exactly that, right? So within 45 minutes, you have to be at the airport. Obviously, they phoned me at like 4 o'clock in the morning, didn't answer, and they pulled me into the office in Dublin. So you had to fly to Dublin, Ireland. And before I even walked into the office, the resignation thing was already there that they were going to fire me. It was a bit of a strange story, but what generally happens is that they take all these younger cabin crew on, and you're on a year probation.
Prove your stuff.
So within that year, they're paying you less than what the full contract is. So whether that's a true story or not, people say that they don't actually want to take you on after probation, because if they take you on after probation, well, they have to pay you more. So what they do is they take on a lot of new staff, just give them the year, find any excuse, and then let them go. Now, at that time, that was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me.
So you got 1 strike and you're out.
1 strike and I'm out. I was like, holy fuck, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
And obviously I was living in Rome. I was like, shit, what do I do now? Like, I love this place. So obviously I had like 2 options. I either go back home to, well, at that point, by this time, my mum and dad had divorced. So it was just my dad that was staying in France.
Mum had gone back to Scotland?
Mum had gone back to Scotland. So it's like, what do I do now? Do I go back to France? Do I go back to Scotland? I don't really want to go back there. So I decided to try and find a job in Italy. Now, bearing in mind, my Italian wasn't that good because I'd been working for an English company in Rome. So when we were on the planes, we were all speaking English. Even though I was working with Italian people, we were speaking English. even with customers, it was English. So my Italian wasn't like really that good. I could get by. But I was like,
Were you actively learning Italian at that time?
Well, I was trying to, but again, way harder because I wasn't fully immersed
in it, yeah.
like I was when I was in France. It was like half English, half Italian. We'd go out on nights out. Some people were speaking Italian, right? Great, but I wasn't really fully immersed in the culture. So I was like, shit, am I going to try and find a job? So I ended up finding 2 jobs. I got a job, I've told you this one before, I used to work for Decathlon. So I ended up working in the winter sports department of Decathlon, selling skis. Bear in mind, I've never been skiing, and my Italian wasn't that good. But also that took my Italian from average to pretty damn good to pretty fast, because I had to sell skis and snowboards and winter jackets, etc. The second job that I got, I worked in a Scottish pub, so that was easier for me. I'm Scottish, right? So that was speaking English. So that was the winter time, and it was a winter contract. But the pub that I was working in Scotland, they run like pub crawls. So summertime, a lot of tourists come to Rome. You take them on like pub crawls. Everybody gets fucked up. It's great. It's all fun.
Yeah. So been in a few of those.
Yeah, we've all been in a few of those. So summer was approaching. So my contract was finishing with Decathlon, and my boss in the Scottish pub was saying, "Hey, why don't you just stay with us? Like, summer's coming. You're going to make a lot of money. It's going to be fun." So I ended up quitting the job, or that contract ended, and I became a full-time
bar
crawler. So essentially, I was drinking alcohol basically every single night for like a good year.
That sounds epic.
It was good, but now I reflect back on it, it wasn't actually that good. It was the same story every single night.
It's like the teenage dream, though.
Yeah, it was pretty. I was 20 at the time, so I was living the dream. I was quite happy.
And so, what next?
So that was living in Rome.
And can I just ask? Sorry, as a pro pub
crawler.
I mean, what's your shift? Like, do you start in the afternoon? Do you start in the morning? Is
So
it a late night thing?
My shift was, we had to promote tickets.
Oh, you got to sell the tickets.
You got to sell the tickets.
Oh, I know exactly who you were.
So I was the guy standing at the Colosseum in Rome, sunglasses on, trying to sell these tickets, walking up to tourists, telling them it was also a pub crawl, but I actually was pretty good at selling.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah, I was a pretty good salesman.
Yeah.
So I was very genuine about it. I wasn't trying to like hack people off or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it pretty much looked like. It was in the morning. You used to go to the Colosseum from like 10 a.m. to maybe like 2. Then you'd go home, chill out, and then you'd be back. We used to meet at the Spanish Steps in Rome every single night at 9 o'clock. That was a meetup point. We met there at 9. Anybody that turned up, we walked to the first pub, which was the Highland, or the Scottish pub. We went there. You got 1 hour of open bar free. So people were just getting absolutely fucking lit inside this pub. We'd stay there. We'd play like drinking games and stuff. Then we'd walk to like another pub and then finish in the club. My night would probably finish at maybe like a 2-3 a.m. Go to sleep. Wake up at 9:30 the next morning. Back at it.
It's pretty impressive. You're hitting that 7 days a week.
I took 1 day off the Sunday.
6 days. That's aggressive.
It was aggressive. I actually don't know how I done it. Because me drinking now, I probably drink maybe about 5 times a year now currently.
Yeah.
And it takes me about 4 weeks to recover.
That's really impressive. I mean, to sustain that, I've done holidays, like 2-3 week holidays where that's been the rundown. But to sustain that for a whole year is actually pretty
savage.
Pretty frightening.
Pretty savage.
So why did that stop?
So obviously I couldn't. I was now thinking to myself, shit, this is great fun, but I can't be doing this when I'm 60. I need to try and sort my shit out. So I went back to Scotland and I went into sales. So it was like
after all that though, why, being a man of like European culture in France and Rome, why did you go back to Scotland?
I think I actually ran out of money. So it was like October, so things started to like dry up in terms of tourists come to Rome and stuff. I was like, I've not been back in Scotland for a long time. I'm going to go back for the winter, because that was like the normal thing you done when it was like seasonal work. People would go and do their summers, and then maybe like winter time they'd go back home. That was like the natural thing to do. So I went back home, and I ended up getting a job as an account manager. So that was, I think I've told you this one before. It was me basically going around to businesses and selling like recycling options. So in Scotland, they're quite strict with their recycling. You've got like 5 bins at home. For restaurants, you got 5 bins. You got a glass, plastic, paper, food bin. So I used to go round to these restaurants and sell them our service, like picking up bins essentially. So that was my job for about a year, which was a great job, by the way. They gave me a company car. Like, it was fucking good. Like, it was commission based. So I was making decent money, and I'm 22. Done that for about a year, and I could see where my life was going at that point. Like, it was going to be in the next couple of years, I was probably going to find a girl, I was probably going to get married, I was probably going to get like a 3-bed house, a dog, and stay in Scotland for the rest of my life. And I remember sitting there, I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is not who I am. Like, I've got something in me that I can go and give to the world. Like, I've put myself in France, I've learned French. I've put myself in Italy, I've learned Italian. Like, I can go out there and do something different than selling fucking bins. Nothing wrong with that, but there was something else that
something was calling you.
Something was calling me. And that's when I went back and I worked for Emirates. So I went back and became a flight attendant.
So you wanted to, something's pulling you back to the airline industry.
So it wasn't so much the airline industry, it was the travel. Like, I wanted to travel the world. Like, I'd obviously seen France, Italy, Spain, Europe, but I knew there was Asia, there was South America, there was the States. Like, the world's fucking huge. So many different experiences to have, cultures to learn, foods to try. So that's when I got the job for Emirates, and that's when I moved to Dubai.
Can I ask, like, from the Scottish lad that you were at 15, who then went away and had all these experiences, probably grew up a lot and evolved a lot as a person, what was it like coming back to Scotland?
It was very, very hard. Even now, like, when I go back and like, obviously my family's my family, but like, people that are maybe close to my family or friends, I find it very hard to connect with them.
Why is that?
I think just because they've never actually, they've never traveled, they've never learned different languages, never really put themselves out there, learn, grow. They're still the same. Like, I've got friends like on Instagram and stuff, they're still doing the same thing as what we were doing at 15. They're still going out, they're still fighting, they're still drinking in the weekend, they're working Monday to Friday, they're going out in the piss on Friday night and not coming home to the Sunday night, spending all their money, living for the weekend, and they're still doing that at this age, and I find that very hard to connect with.
Okay, so you get a job for Emirates.
So get a job with Emirates. Great time. Spent 4 years traveling the world.
So you moved to Dubai?
Moved to Dubai, which was obviously a big change.
Is that what, if you work for Emirates, you have to be
so you have to be based in Dubai. They don't have any other bases.
Yeah.
Now, Emirates is very different to Ryanair. Well, you're actually having layovers in different countries. So you're flying to New York, you stay 2 nights in New York. You're flying wherever, you always get a layover. So I was traveling the world. Probably one of the best experiences I've had in my life. Like, literally, you turn up to Dubai, accommodation is paid for, bills are paid for, your transportation to and from work's paid for. Like, you're living the dream. You're getting like lots of benefits. Travel's pretty much free in terms of buying tickets, and you literally see the world.
And did you love flying? Because, you know, I sometimes think when I fly, and because I've done a lot of flying, not recently, but. And no matter how many flights I do, like, there's still an element of flying that scares the shit out of me. It's like the moment I hear the pilot say there's going to be turbulence, like, my genitals suck up into my belly, and I'm like,
the plane's coming down.
I'm like, this is it.
This is it. It's my time.
Like, and I used to be able to, and it's probably because I was really unhealthy, but as a university student, I used to be able to sleep 12 hours in economy. I'd like genuinely fall asleep before takeoff and wake up as we were landing. Now, like, I'm so on edge at all times that I feel like to string more than 50 minutes of sleep on an economy flight is impossible for me. So, like, was there something about you that, obviously you love travel and exploration, but like, what about you? Because your actual job was to be on a plane and be flying. Did you love your job as well?
I really enjoyed my job. Like, I think now that when I reflect back on it, like, I think I've got an innate something inside me that I really enjoy helping other people. Like, customer service is something that I actually really enjoy. I enjoy conversation with people. I love being polite. I love just getting to know that person. And in that industry, that's what you're doing all day. And it's very different to, you're actually working, like, you don't really sit down that much. When you're traveling, it's a very different experience. You're sitting down for 12 hours. You're working, you're on your feet for 12 hours. So it's quite a different experience. But the experience that I had at Emirates, I really, really enjoyed it. Like then I loved my job, yeah, for sure.
And like, are you working out there? You haven't, so this whole time you haven't mentioned
We've not
once
talked
like
about fitness.
training, fitness and exercise. Like, where did that come into your life?
Fitness came into my life when I think back of when I first started like playing around with fitness. I was still in Glasgow. So I was teenager, like maybe 12, 13. And I remember that my uncle had one of those gyms, you know, those, like, you remember Argos?
Yeah.
It's like catalogue where you can order stuff.
Yeah. I got my university pull-up bar from
You
Argos.
see, everyone got something from, remember that brand that was called York?
Yeah, York. Yeah, of course.
So it
all
was
the
like,
dumbbells. And
yeah,
like the
the
adjustable
gold,
things.
the gold
Yeah.
adjustable. So he had a set, the bench, barbell, and like a few dumbbells. And I remember that.
You can buy York dumbbells in Hong Kong, by the way.
Can you?
There's a York shop.
Yeah. York's a pretty good brand, actually.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Just hate unscrewing those dumbbells.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pain, but
Yeah.
hey, that's all we had when I was 12.
Yeah. Those were my first set of dumbbells as well.
And obviously, I would finish school. So this is like maybe 3 o'clock. I would go into my Uncle Derek's room, and he obviously didn't know I was in there because he's working. And I'm playing around with all these dumbbells, and I'm doing like, I remember doing like fucking bicep curls and upright rows and stuff. Didn't really know what I was doing. Rep scheme, don't know what it was. So that was like my first introduction. Then it was when we went to France. There's not really a culture of like, there's not a gym culture.
Yeah.
There's a culture of you playing sports in terms of like football, badminton, etc. So that was the type of fitness I was doing there. Rome, not so much of like a fitness industry, but there was, so in between when I was staying in Rome, I went back to Glasgow for a short period and then went back to Rome. So it was like a double stint in Rome. But when that stint, it was like a winter period, I went back to Glasgow for like 6 months. My friend actually introduced me to the gym like properly. Like it was like JD Sports or whatever it was. They had a gym upstairs, paid membership, and it was like a global gym.
Yeah.
And it
JD's, was it JD Gym?
JD Gym, that's the one.
Yeah.
JD
I was a
Gym.
member of JD Gym.
What
in
an
Newcastle.
unbelievable gym.
So
and I'm thinking about it now, they actually every single piece of equipment, and they also now remember the functional area, which they didn't really use, but they had a rower, they had a sled. Fucking good gym, actually.
Yeah.
So
JD's, myself and Ant were both members of JD Gym in Newcastle. And I remember in my first week, I walked in the toilet and there was an Arab guy jabbing himself with a needle, and he was screaming in front of the mirror. And I was just like,
what is this place?
Is this place? But it was amazing. Like, I actually love it. And I think back now and I'm like, they had so much cool shit in there. And all I would do was like warm up on the bike, head to the squat rack, do some RDLs, do some back squats, maybe do some pull-ups, and then like massage my calf on a power plate and then leave. And I'm like, oh my God, there was so many cool machines and I didn't use it at all. Anyway, sorry, this is about you, not Mabby.
No, all good. So the program that he was following at the time was like a pure bodybuilding program.
Nice.
It was, do you remember, like, there was this guy, he was very famous, he was like, you know, like Steve Cook and stuff. This guy was the Australian version of like Steve Cook. He was called like Z or something. Anyway, long story short, he had this program. I don't know, because you couldn't really buy things on, they didn't have iPhones or anything this time, but somehow he managed to have this piece of paper with this split on it. And it was like back and buys, shoulders and triceps, one leg day, and there was like a full body resistance day, and then there was one cardio day where it was steady state cardio. Yeah. And it was the same
Sounds
split.
like quite an intelligent program.
Mate, we rinsed that for 6 months straight. Like literally, exercise selection didn't change, rep scheme didn't change. There was no tempo. It was 3x10 on everything, and we rinsed that program. And we got pretty jacked, to be fair, because at this time I'm 20. So you touch a dumbbell at 20, you're going to gain muscle.
Yeah, I know if you never touched a dumbbell before that. It was just funny. Like as you were telling the story, I was thinking about, you know, just what my sessions used to look like as well. But you know, you do anything, and this is like, this still applies to in this day and age. Like someone who's never come to the gym before, doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna. It's novel stimulus that your body's going to try and adapt to. It's so good. I wish it was still
so good. I wish it was still like that.
that.
And actually, I messaged my friend before we were doing this podcast and we were going to talk about it to see if he had still had that split somewhere, but he said he didn't. I was gutted. I'd love to have seen it now.
He's so good.
But yeah, so that was the evolution in the gym. Went back to Rome. Not really much fitness. We were doing like push-ups in my room before I went out to sell these tickets. Because also I had to have a bit of a pump on to sell tickets.
You know what? Sorry, just want to interrupt there.
Go.
Because that was always like, we scored pre-lash pump. It's like you'd actually go to the university gym in your boozing gear, and you'd obviously just do push-ups, biceps, and triceps. But what I actually realized was that it actually wasn't good, because what would happen, And obviously the t-shirts I was wearing were obscenely tight on my arms. So what would happen is that my arms would inflate, stretch my t-shirt,
and they become baggy.
And about 30 minutes later, when all the blood's gone from your arms, you've now got baggy sleeves.
Yeah.
And I just always think, why am I doing this? It took me like a good 2 years to be like, this actually isn't winning.
Unbelievable pump though.
So good.
Unbelievable pump.
Yeah.
So yes, it was push-ups.
So good.
Push-ups before selling tickets. Then that's fast. So that was like kind of just doing my own thing. I wasn't really going to the gym. It was more like body weight stuff. So it was a lot of push-ups, a lot of air squats and stuff. Then fast forward to Dubai, we obviously had gym access and a lot of benefits in Dubai. So I was going to the gym more regular there. But again, I was only doing what I knew, which was the bodybuilding stuff. So I was continuing with like kind of that split, maybe changing something there and there. So I was doing that, and then I kind of fell into like HIIT training. So I was doing like, the body coach was massive then. So it was like the Tabata style workouts. So it was like the Russian twist. It was like the high knees.
Yeah.
That was great. That was good fun.
Yeah. I've did that as well. I mean, it was just basic circuit training.
Yeah, it's just circuit training, yeah.
Yeah. And
body weight style.
Yeah. Just pick eight exercises and just go round and round and round. It's fun though.
And then I found CrossFit. So I was obviously still working as a flight attendant, and I'd seen, I don't know how that I'd found CrossFit, but I remember seeing these guys and they were unbelievably jacked. I was like, holy fuck, like how do they get in that shape? And they was like, oh, it's CrossFit. I was like, fuck, I'm going to go and try that. So
where were you seeing these guys?
The few people at like just in the Emirates community were doing it. But then at this time, there was obviously iPhones, there was YouTube, and I remember watching something about the CrossFit Games thing popped up on my YouTube feed. And at that time, it was like Rich Ronan and stuff. They were standing on the podium. I was like, how on earth are these guys in that shape? I was like, that is unbelievable. So then went down the whole rabbit hole of watching Rich in his barn doing 5 workouts a day. I was like, that's what I need to do. So found CrossFit. Wasn't very sustainable for me.
But when you say you found CrossFit, were you self-prescribing CrossFit?
No,
Did you
so
go
then
to CrossFit
I
gym?
went to an actual CrossFit gym. So there's CrossFit gyms in Dubai. There's actually quite a lot of CrossFit gyms. So
they were very early adopters as well in Asia.
And they had like, they were sponsored, it was like Reebok, CrossFit Life Spark or something it was called. So that was like the main one. So I went there. I remember the first workout that I ever done was like Russian kettlebell swings, rope climbs and running. And oh my God, did I die. And the next day, I have never felt so much pain in my arms in my whole life. Because obviously I was quite, wouldn't say fit, but I was pretty strong. Like I'd touched some weights before. I could do a rope climb. So the coach was also, oh, you can do one rope climb, you may as well just fucking do a 20-minute AMRAP of rope climbs, Russian kettlebell swings and running. And I was like, yeah,
that would still be a hard workout now.
Yeah, I'd done like 3 rope climbs and then obviously couldn't climb the rope. So then I'm doing, the lowering of the rope and pulling myself back up. That's what he had scaled me into that.
Yeah.
So I'd done 20-minute AMRAP of that, and oh my God, the next day I couldn't move my arms literally for about 3 days. I remember being on the plane the next day trying to serve food and talk to people. I couldn't literally bend my arms.
Secretly being so delighted, being like, my arms are going to be so huge
big
when they adapt to the stimulus.
So that was kind of my journey with CrossFit, but I also kind of very early learned that it wasn't sustainable for me. Why? Because I was traveling the world, wasn't sleeping the best, and bearing in mind when I was going to these other places, well, I was trying to replicate what I was doing in the CrossFit gyms, maybe in a hotel gym, or maybe I try and go to another CrossFit gym in a different country, and I was getting absolutely fucked. My body was like, what are you doing? But I couldn't piece those like 2 things together. But now I look back, well, it was easy. Well, I'm flying like crazy hours, not sleeping, and I'm trying to do a high intensity workout. It just didn't work. That's where I found Mr. Marcus Philly.
Can I just ask though, because I feel like that story with CrossFit is how we all started, because we didn't know that what we were doing wasn't sustainable, and everyone thought that high intensity, because Fronin could do it, that's what we should all be doing.
And he's doing it 5 times a day, and I'm only trying to do it once. Why is it not working?
Yeah. And but when I think about it took me like a good 2-3 years already as an educated coach. I would say, I was smart. I knew about strength conditioning and adaptation and recovery. But I guess a question I kept, and I think we talk about this on the podcast a lot, was that, maybe this is the way to do it. Maybe the way that I've been doing it has been wrong all the time. And it wasn't until like I had some serious health issues,
setbacks,
that I had to, which forced me to stop, which is where I then realized this is actually what feeling good and being healthy feels like. So what was was there a trigger for you? Was there a point? Like how did you put 2 and 2 together?
I just remember like my body just wasn't recovering. I just wasn't feeling good. Like my muscles were sore, my joints were sore, like everything was sore. And I was like, I can't be doing this for another fucking 6 days, let alone another 6 years. And I just remember like I was physically like actually like killing myself. I was like, this is not good. There's got to be a different way. And I remember scrolling on Instagram. Right, and you know, you get like the feed where like those people pop up, and that's where I seen fucking Marcus Philly doing like a single arm kettlebell bottoms up press, and he looked fucking jacked. And I was like, oh, that looks pretty good, and he's pretty jacked. So I'm gonna figure out what he's doing. And that's when he had just started posting about like the Awaken Training series and stuff. So I remember doing that, and it was fucking great. Like I was getting like this, I was like, this is great. Like I don't have to do rope climbs for 20 minutes and do Russian kettlebell swings and run. I can do some bodybuilding stuff, maybe hop on the bike. And it was very appropriate to what the gyms that I was going to, and like when I was traveling, like a hotel gym doesn't have a rig to do like toes to bar. Like I could maybe do some strict pull-ups, I could maybe do some dumbbell work, some kettlebell work, and it was all good. And I was feeling really, really good. And I was going back to the gym there where I used to train. And I was telling everybody, I was like, guys, you guys need to go on this. This is fucking really, really good. I'm feeling really good. And I was also starting to look really, really good. A lot of time under tension, a lot of strength endurance stuff, a lot of build. Like I was starting to look and feel good. So that was like the massive pivotal moment I had in my like athletic experiences, where I knew that there was something different out there. Not to say better, just something better for me.
It's just funny to hear, because at that point in time, when early adopters to CrossFit in those days, no one was prioritizing feeling good. So I could imagine you coming into a gym and saying, I feel really good. If you said that to me, I'd be like, I don't do this to feel good.
Yeah, I don't do this.
That's not why I'm doing this. And now when I think about it, I'm like, why didn't I do this to feel good? Like it was actually taking away from so many other aspects of my life. Just the amount of work and the intensity, and how I just wasn't balancing stress as well. But I can imagine that falling on deaf ears. Is that the case?
That was falling on deaf ears. People like, oh, why is he doing bodybuilding?
You're just a pussy, mate.
Like, yeah, why are you doing fucking bodybuilding in a CrossFit gym? Why are you turning that kettlebell upside down? You should be fucking doing Russian kettlebell swings with that or something, right? People just weren't buying into it because the culture was there. And not to say there's no right or wrong. We talk about this all the time, but people were fucking killing themselves. And people are feeling like shit. But they don't have that awareness to put those two and two together. They just
or to know that there's anything
different
wrong with that.
Out there. Yeah, that's their norm. That's their lens. That's all they know, right? So they're all doing this thing, and I'm the only one in this fucking open gym area doing stupid stuff with kettlebells. But I fucking loved it. It was so good.
And so where did that journey take you?
So that journey took me through obviously doing like the Awaken Training series. It was like a year. So they'd done it in iterations. So it was like 3-month blocks.
Yeah, I remember. So
I went through the whole year, but the actual year took me longer because I wasn't training 5 days a week like it was prescribed, because I was traveling at the same time. So it maybe took me like a year and 3 months or 6 months to finish the full year. So I always had to scroll back on TrueCoach, go back to like previous workouts. So I completed that Awaken Training series, and I got pretty fit and pretty good, and I knew what a clean was. Like I'd never done any Olympic lifting, so I got pretty good at like decent at cleaning, decent at like snatching, and I was feeling really, really good. And I remember like telling like my friends and the coaches that I was hanging around with to say like, I want to be able to program like that. Like, how the fuck is this guy? How can he build a program for 1 year? How can he take someone from where I was to where I got to in 1 year? Like, I was like, this is fucking magic. So I was like, where's he learning all this stuff from? And that's where I fell into OPEX.
Continue.
So, well, obviously...
So at this point, you're still flying?
I'm still flying, but I'd obviously now found this massive passion of health and fitness. Like, I was now starting to tell my friends I was flying with, like, you can do this fitness. And obviously, like, I was like a fucking fanboy of Marcus Phillips. I'm listening to all the education he's putting out. I was fucking on it. And he was obviously coming from, like, a place of wholeness in terms of, like, sleep. And this is one of the big things that that was the only like content I was getting that was talking about sleep and auto-regulation and stress management and eating good food, whilst I was turning up to the CrossFit gym and the CrossFit box. No one's talking about that stuff. Coaches are not talking about it. And I remember I was still a flight attendant. I was like, guys, you guys are missing a piece here. But no one would listen to me. I'm not even a fucking coach. I'm a flight attendant that's doing fucking stupid stuff with kettlebells.
Yeah.
So obviously found this massive passion for health and fitness, and I remember telling my wife at the time, I was like, Petra, I think it's time for me to leave my job as a flight attendant and become a coach. So I first done the CrossFit level 1, and I had applied for an apprenticeship at my local CrossFit gym. So got the apprenticeship, but I was still flying at the same time. So I was like flying on my days off, I'd go to the gym, serve my apprenticeship. So it was like I had to complete, like, I think it was like 50 hours that I had to do. And I learned so much within these 50 hours. It took me like, I think it was like 4 months to complete this mentorship or apprenticeship. Learned a lot. The guy that I was learning from, great fucking coach. He was seminar stuff for CrossFit. So he was very much like 2159. Like, he was a very, very good coach. Taught me a lot. And at the end of the apprenticeship, they offered me a full-time position. So I quit my job and became a coach at this CrossFit gym after serving my apprenticeship.
So you've got a coach, you've got a mentor who's a CrossFit seminar staff. But I think when I think back into your shoes, you were at the point in time where you tried CrossFit, seen that it wasn't something that was right for you. You'd kind of picked some holes in what the offering was. But what was that process like? You know, being mentored by someone who's probably very, very much in CrossFit. Was he, and I don't know what his message was to you, you know, was he teaching you things that you'd experienced in your CrossFit gyms, or was he telling you that there's a different way to do it?
To be honest, the reason I went there, because that was the only clear opportunity that I could see to get into coaching. Like, there's not really, like, you don't go to school to become a coach. You do your degree and then, well, you can do that, but that's not, I was past that stage. Had a full-time job, so I couldn't actually see any other way to get into the industry except from going to do my level 1, because once I'd done my level 1 and I'd done that weekend, well, like, I was now a certified coach.
Can you open a gym?
I can open a gym. So that was my entryway into it. And his message was very much, wasn't like kill yourself. He was very much talking about like the full aspect. He was a very much that he was old school CrossFit, where it's like one workout a day, you're going to change up, like what CrossFit was
constantly varied,
but what it was right at the beginning, it was like, okay, one day you're going to come in, you're going to do aerobic work, next day you're going to come in, you're going to do some weightlifting, etc. So that was his like principles and his methodology, and that's what he taught me. But at the same time, I'm still doing the Philly stuff on the side, so they kind of merged. And I did learn a lot, but again, that was my only opportunity to find a foot into the coaching industry. I could only see the CrossFit way. I couldn't see, because at this time I didn't actually know about OPEX just yet. I couldn't see me just starting my own thing like Marcus Philly, and no one knows who I am. Can't just become a coach like that. So the only opportunity was a CrossFit level 1.
And what was that like? You got off this job, you quit Emirates.
So quit Emirates, became a full-time coach, and enjoyed it, but knew that the message that I wanted to preach and the values that I had with health and fitness did not align with this workout of the day. Like, we're not talking about, like, we weren't really talking about sleep, we weren't talking about stress management, we weren't talking about the other 23 hours you have in the day. We're only focused on the workout of the day. And it was that point I knew that I had to find something different, and that's when I went and I found OPEX. And again, they were talking about stress management, talking about sleep, etc. So that's why I gravitated towards these guys.
Talk me through that journey.
So that journey was, so I'd been coaching maybe about 8 months full time. 9 months, COVID hit. And I had been wanting to do the CCP for a long time, but it was quite expensive. And I didn't really have the time, because obviously, you know, a full-time coach, I was working 4 to 6 hours on the floor every day plus training. I was exhausted. Right, so I was like, how do I do this? COVID hit, it was a perfect opportunity. I remember telling Petra, my wife, I was like, Petra, now's the time that I need to do this, because I'm not going to have another opportunity to learn the way that I can learn now. So I went full steam ahead with the CCP. COVID, we were obviously doing like Zoom classes and stuff, but I had all this extra time to study, and I studied CCP, passed, done my final exams, etc., passed all that. And then I got this job, and now I'm here, and that's been a crazy story. I'm actually looking at the clock, it's 5:10. I have been talking a lot, and I'm sweating. Jeez.
You can tell in the aircon.
Yeah.
It's like, I think something that's really cool in your story is that you got you didn't have the pressure of like having to conform to CrossFit, which I think is like what delays so many coaches' journey. They get stuck and wrapped up in that CrossFit world and in the early adopters of CrossFit back then, and you were able to experience something different because you know Marcus Fiddy, like his story is that he is the burnt out CrossFitter and he wants to build something for burnt out CrossFitters as well. And it's really cool that you found that so early on, experienced it and committed yourself to it. Obviously had your own experiences which made you believe that this was something that was more aligned with health and longevity and sustainability. And I think, you know, coming from that experience into an OPEX, having experienced both, I think is a really, because I'm trying to think, you know, you haven't been, it's not been that long since you did OPEX.
No, it was like a year and a bit ago. But
the way that when you talk as a coach, like it's like you did it 10 years ago. And I'm trying to think like what has allowed you to, you know, like just grasp the concept so easily and so quickly, because you do, like you speak, we have conversations about coaching that I think you have a really good ability to take what most would see as a very complex issue and boil it down to something that's really simple and understandable, and you just go back to the basics. And even me sometimes, I'm like, yeah, it actually just is that simple. But I think, again, connecting the dots, it's like you had just some great experiences and so much variety leading into OPEX that you didn't go in with a bias. Do you know what I mean? I think so many people do go, I went into OPEX with a bias, but I went into OPEX being like, please give me some clarity because I'm fucking confused. And so it took me longer to like try and navigate because I was still stuck between like, but I'm hearing that 2159 and 5x5s and fuck yourself up and conditioning is the right thing, but you're telling me something different. I don't know which to believe. You know what I mean? What do you think?
I think it was just like, again, it was due to my personal experience. Like it was me trying CrossFit whilst doing a really high stressful job physically and mentally and emotionally that led me down this path of understanding what I was doing then just wasn't, I couldn't do it. Literally, I couldn't do it for another 6 days, let alone, like I said, 6 months. I had to find something different. And this guy, fucking half naked, turned up on my Instagram screaming like built not burnt and like look good, move well and all these things. And I was like, he's speaking to me right now. And that was my experience. And then he was talking about sleep, and that's when I started to connect all these dots, like going from, oh, it's because I'm flying 14 hours and only sleeping 4 that I can't express intensity and I can't fuck myself up in a workout. So it was due to my own experience that led me down that path and ultimately let me help others, right?
So what's your mission and what's your message now?
I think it's always, well, it's not always been, but what it is now is like it's consistency over intensity. It's I personally want to be doing this for 30 years. I want to be the guy at 70 that's fucking jacked doing some bicep curls.
You'll be the second most jacked person in this room.
No, you'll be the second most.
You will be the second most jacked person in the room.
I can't wait to see that. But I want to be that person that's preaching that I've got to this stage because I'm managing the other 23 hours in my day. I'm not just focusing on what's on the whiteboard. I'm focusing on my sleep. I'm focusing on having great rhythm, consistency, getting daily movement, getting daily sunshine. That's what's allowing me to feel the way that I do and essentially look the way that I do because I'm managing all the other things in life.
Nice. Do you feel like the build program has been, like, do you think that aligns with you perfectly?
I think it does, yeah. I think it does. I think it's, we're still within the build program. We're still getting that small dose of intensity. You're still getting to jump on the bike and go for 30 seconds moderately hard, but you're also still building really good foundations that's going to let you do this for another 30 years. I
mean, I think, you know, going back to the mission that we just talked about at the start, like everything we do here at the Process in Coastal is about sustainability. We used to use the word longevity all the time, but I think longevity is a word that's almost used too much. And I think it's got a misconstrued meaning now. And I think when people think about sustainable, it's a lot easier to picture what sustainability looks like. And I love that in all the programs that we're creating, like sustainability is at the heart of it. It doesn't matter if you want to get to the CrossFit Games, or you've been a professional rugby player, or you just want to look good, move well. Like sustainability is always going to be at the heart of it. And you know, that's something that I believe in massively, and it's so cool that we've met along our journeys at some point and both look at fitness and health in the same eyes. And I think both of us have personal experience that has led us to believe that this is the way we want to do it, and this is the way we want to pass on the message and impact the rest of the world. And I think, you know, we talk about it as well all the time. There's no greater lesson than experiences, and that gives us empathy to others who are on that road. And like the majority of the world that we do meet as a coach, like they are on a path of non-sustainable things. And so cool.
I think what they always say is like non-sustainable activity leads to non-sustainable behaviors. Right.
Love that. Liam, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me on. That was actually pretty good. I enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed it. Lots of dots connecting. And I'm sure our listeners who've got to know you in person, or whether it's through the process and the build program, or even just through your Instagram channel, would appreciate your story. And I think it makes a lot of sense as to why you are the great person that you are today. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Ed.